Hi, I'm Bill Rice with Kaleidico. We're a lead generation agency, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about designing sales scripts. And if you've seen my previous video on just kind of the appeal for using sales scripts and why I think they're so important, or you're part of an email course, which this video is in, you will hopefully have sort of heard my appeal to using sales scripts and why they're so important, and getting some of that foundation, and you're starting to kind of believe that sales scripts are super important. But today I want to focus on the actual design of those sales scripts. And when we're talking about designing a sales script, I'm not talking about sort of putting pen to paper yet. I want to really just talk about the higher level structure and the things that need to be accomplished within that script and the things that you need to accomplish in using that script. And so I'm going to go through a simple checklist, a checklist that I keep in mind every time I'm building a sales script. And I use one on every call. Sometimes I have a dedicated sales script for things that are just maybe inbound leads that I'm doing the same sort of thing over and over again, or the same kind of leads. But sometimes I'm doing discovery calls, and you can actually see I quickly put together these little sales scripts when I'm doing a discovery call to make sure I'm achieving those key points. I use note cards a lot of times. You can see they're super simple. It doesn't have to be a long thing. It doesn't have to be nice and printed out. Sometimes I'll pick up a legal pad. So whatever I have, I want to create a structure that reminds me of what I'm trying to accomplish on any particular call. And like I said, for routine, repeatable sales processes or inbound leads or even cold calling and outbound outreach, it's good to kind of sit down and craft a very specific, detailed script. But even when you go deeper into the sales process, into a discovery, make sure you still, on every single call, have some form of sales script. Because when we're designing sales scripts, I like to think of them as a roadmap. We're trying to design before the call starts everything that I want to accomplish, or the steps that I feel or have from experience learned will help me to move that potential buyer through both a mental and a logical and an emotional process of getting to a buying decision as quickly as possible. And sometimes it's not just a one call, but these are the elements that I've found over time are essential to be a part of that script design process. So as I'm going through, I'm going to list out again my checklist, and we're going to go through it fairly quickly. If you want the checklist itself, just drop down into the comments here in the YouTube video, or go to the YouTube channel where this video is, and put in the comments, give me the sales script checklist, or the sales script design checklist. So anything in there along that checklist, just drop a comment requesting that checklist, and I will direct message you and drop you a link to that, or PDF directly to where you can grab that. Again, no email sign up. I'm just going to give you that checklist because it's just helpful to sit down and review as you're building that script. Okay, so here's my definitive outline for sales scripts. The first element that needs to be in here is I usually start off with a couple of questions right off in the intro. So right after I've kind of made my introductions and we've sort of established a little bit of rapport. Again, this will heavily depend on the type of call that you're engaged in. Is a scheduled discovery call, or is it an outbound sort of cold call? But once you've established just the tiniest bit of rapport, I want to start to gather intelligence, because I know in my business and the businesses that I help to write scripts for, there are patterns, there are customer patterns, and they're always the same. So customers need certain things, and they usually have certain needs or pain points that are very consistent. There is a pattern, but generally the situations are always a little bit different. So the raw materials that go into making up that consistent pattern that actually makes them a buyer, there's all kinds of intelligence that needs to be gathered within that to help you move them through that buying decision. You might need to know, have they tried to buy before? Have they had a bad experience in the past? Is this something that they've done routinely? Are they an experienced buyer? There's a whole bunch of different questions. Maybe they're not the buyer. Maybe they're the researcher. So if you're in a B2B setting, maybe they're just the information gatherer, right? And there's a higher level executive. So you want to build out some questions, 3 to 5 questions. You may not go through all of them, but you should have a set of questions that help to inform or trigger your intelligence gathering. This will help you from sort of getting on the call and just sort of fumbling around, because you'll have a very specific agenda and you'll have a few questions. And then, of course, from there, you don't want to be so stilted. You want to move into a conversation, but it's good to have these conversation starters, these questions. The second thing, you want to actually build into your script, and sometimes you have to remind yourself, especially as you're getting started, silence. Sometimes I'll actually write in the script, say this and then silence, or be quiet, or stop talking. But we want to actively listen, right? We want to give space for that prospect to start talking back to us. And sometimes not only is silence important so that we can get into a listening mode and start paying attention, it's also good, like I said, to have paper and pencil around, legal pad, and start scribbling and writing down notes. Sometimes you're not actually taking notes to retain it later, but you're just taking notes to sort of help yourself actively engage in that. And as a result of that, you're going to start giving positive feedback. So instead of talking, you're going to be going, yeah, I understand. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I can see where you're coming from. Oh, I've seen situations like that before. Again, affirming, they're sort of getting engaged in the conversation and forcing yourself to actively listen. So again, when you're writing that script, make sure that you're programming time that tells you shut your mouth, right? And let them sort of talk and talk themselves into that decision. We also want to start with logic. I get a lot of sales calls, especially cold calls, where they actually jump forward with emotion instead of logic. Logic is always the best place to start, is just be very pragmatic. Be a little bit, sort of bring your level down a little bit. We're going to work up to the emotion. Emotion does buy, right? We're going to work up to sort of that level of intensity. But at first, we want to start with some logic. We want to compel them with some data or some numbers, or just being pragmatic, or scenarios that are very sort of logic driven and based. Then from there, once we have a base which creates sort of credibility and trustworthiness, then we're going to mount the enthusiasm. And that data, or whatever you're using in your logical argument, whatever resonates or they respond to, that's where you're going to build the enthusiasm around whatever is resonating with them in the logical sort of framework. So as you go through that logic, whatever gets them excited, that's what you're going to build enthusiasm around, not just have some emotional thing programmed into your script. And then ultimately, and this kind of all starts to flow together, right? That's going to help you to establish the why that they're inquiring, why they're potentially a buyer, and really understand sort of what's motivating them to be here. And then you're going to try to take all of your enthusiasm that you're building, and you're going to transfer that over to them, right? You're going to start to get them excited about the fact that you have a solution, and that they're in the right place, and that you understand what they're talking about, and you're an expert, and you've dealt with people like them. You're going to start to transfer that emotion, that enthusiasm, that passion for your product to them, and then ultimately create inside of that script a forward vision. So give a part, as you move through this roadmap, there should be a part where you remind yourself, once you've sort of started to create and transfer that emotion and create some enthusiasm, you understand the logical part that's getting them excited, you're actually going to then paint a picture. This is where the storytelling comes in. You're going to paint a picture of what the future looks like, that forward vision that includes your solution. So sometimes that could be storytelling about how you've helped other clients or other people like them, or scenarios, good case studies, good news stories that have been the result of sort of this vision that you're painting. And then ultimately, you're going to start to move into the closing phase. You're going to do some trial closes. You're going to see if you're in a place where you've got some level of commitment, and you're going to try to gain that commitment from them and get that acknowledgement that, yeah, I'm actually thinking about buying, or this is something that I want to strongly consider, or, yeah, I'm ready to close. And listen for that. So often I see salespeople run right over the closing. When somebody says, yep, I'm ready to buy, you need to stop selling and start there and get ready to take the order. Once we have that close, it's helpful to go back and clarify the order, sort of clarify what they're buying and the understanding of sort of what you guys have committed to, both of you. And so make sure that you outline, you get clarity in exactly what they've committed to and exactly what you're selling to them or you're going to provide, so we can get those expectations in alignment. And then ultimately, always, and this is why it's really important to have a sales script, is you should already have baked into your note card or whatever you're using as your sales script specific next steps. Again, it's a very common mistake for salespeople to kind of run through this quickly, get to a close, sort of take the order, but then they don't actually inform that client of what's next, what are the next steps, what do I need from you. So make sure that you've outlined those next steps, and ideally you've got them written in your script. And so you're going to say, hey, this is what's going to happen next. These are the things that I need from you. Here's the things that I'm going to be doing. And by the way, I'm going to follow up and I'm going to give all of this information that I just outlined to you in an email so that you can have at your fingertips a nice little tidy checklist so we can move through this process and get you to implementation or get you to execution or get you to an actual closing depending on what your product is. And that right there is the ideal roadmap. Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street, uses the concept or the terminology of the straight line syntax. So this is your straight line. When you're building out a sales script, you're writing down your most ideal sort of flow to a closing. Now, as you go through that, you're going to wander off, and it's okay to wander off because you want to be responsive. You want this to feel like a conversation. You want them to get off track or to pull you off track. Sometimes objections will pull you off track. But if you have this sort of linear straight line, this ideal process that you want to move through in that conversation, this agenda, it will help you to get back on track and move down into that close. So again, whenever you're designing the sales script, we're essentially trying to build this ideal roadmap and give you something tangible to look at and reference to know where you are in that buying process and that process of convincing them to make that commitment. And you will know when you're off track and you can bring it back. So again, hopefully you enjoyed this. We've got a whole series in this course where we're talking about designing sales scripts. So definitely reach out or leave a comment and ask me how to get to that link. There'll be probably a link in the description for how you can kind of get on that email course if you want to take it. And then also ask in the comments if you want this sales script design checklist. Just say that in the comments and I will direct message you with a link to get that. So again, no email, just going to give that away so that you just have a nice little framework and a structure to put beside you as you're writing that script. So hope you enjoyed that. Again, my name is Bill Rice with Kaleido. We're a lead generation agency. Encourage you to subscribe and click that like button so you can get more of this content. Talk to you next time.